Good afternoon, everyone. In the last session, we were discussing about the limitations of the TI plasmids. Despite these constraints, a number of plant cell vectors have been constructed. And all these TI plasmid based vectors, they are all similarly organized and they contain the following components. Number 1, a selectable marker gene such as neomycin phosphotransferase as an example. So this confers kanamycin resistance to transformed plant cells because the neomycin phosphotransferase gene is prokaryotic in origin. It is necessary to put it under the control of plant transcriptional regulation signal. So that includes both a promoter and a termination phosphoadenylation sequence, so as to ensure that it is efficiently expressed in transformed plant cells only. Next, we have an origin of DNA replication. So this allows the plasmid to replicate in E. coli. In some vectors, an additional origin of replication that functions in Agrobacterium tumefaciens have also been added. So there are reports which mention about an additional origin of replication that is put, which functions in Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Third one is the right border sequence of the tDNA region. Now this region is absolutely required for tDNA integration into plant cell DNA. Although most cloning vectors include both a right and a left border sequence. And the fourth one is a polylinker, that is MCS, a multiple cloning site, to facilitate insertion of the cloned gene into the region between the tDNA border sequence. Right? So these are the components of TI plasmid. Number 1, a selectable marker gene. Number 2, origin of DNA replication. Number 3, the right border sequence of the tDNA. Number 4, the MCS, the multiple cloning site. Because these cloning vectors, they lack the virulence genes, they cannot by themselves effect the transfer and integration of the tDNA region into the recipient plant cells. So they are not capable enough to transfer and integrate into the recipient plant cell. So two different approaches have been used to meet these ends. Right? In one approach, a binary vector system is used as shown in the figure. The binary cloning vector contains both E. coli and Agrobacterium tumefaciens origin of DNA replication. So if you carefully see, you will find the two origin of replications. Number 1, E. coli, and number 2, Agrobacterium tumefaciens. So this binary cloning vector contains both E. coli and Agrobacterium tumefaciens origins of DNA replication, but no virulence genes. So it is actually an E. coli Agrobacterium tumefaciens shuttle vector. In true sense, it is a shuttle vector. And all the cloning steps are carried out in E. coli before the vector is introduced into the Agrobacterium tumefaciens. So this system has or it contains both E. coli and Agrobacterium tumefaciens origin of DNA replication, but no virulence genes. And all the cloning steps, they are carried out in E. coli before the vector is introduced into the Agrobacterium tumefaciens. Now the recipient Agrobacterium tumefaciens strain carries a modified TI plasmid, that is defective or disarmed TI plasmid, that contains a complete set of virulence gene but lacks the portions or all of the tDNA region, so that this tDNA cannot be transferred. Right? Now this recipient Agrobacterium tumefaciens strain carries a modified TI plasmid that contains a complete set of virulence genes, but it lacks portions or a small portion or maybe the complete tDNA region, so that this tDNA cannot be transferred. So in this system, the defective TI plasmid synthesizes the virulence gene products, and then this mobilizes the tDNA region of the binary cloning vector plasmid. So by providing the proteins encoded by the virulence genes, the defective TI plasmid is acting as a helper plasmid. So what is the defective plasmid doing here? The role is to synthesize the virulence gene products which mobilize the tDNA region of the binary cloning vector plasmid. Now, by providing the proteins, the defective TI plasmid is acting as a helper plasmid, thus enabling the tDNA from the binary cloning vector to be inserted into the plant chromosomal DNA. Right. This is one approach. We have the second approach. This approach is called the co-integrate vector system approach. More specifically, co-integrate vector system, that is, the cloning vector recombines with a modified TI plasmid, that is disarmed TI plasmid, which lacks the tumor producing genes of the tDNA within Agrobacterium tumefaciens, and then the entire cloning vector becomes integrated into the disarmed TI plasmid, as shown in the figure. So this second approach is called the co-integrate vector system or the co-integrate vector system approach. Here what is happening? The cloning vector recombines with a modified TI plasmid, that is disarmed TI plasmid, which lacks the tumor producing genes of the tDNA, that is within the Agrobacterium tumefaciens, and then the entire cloning vector becomes integrated into the disarmed TI plasmid. Now the co-integrate cloning vehicle and the disarmed helper TI plasmid, they carry the homologous DNA sequences that provide a shared site for in vivo homologous recombination. Normally these sequences lie inside of the tDNA regions. Right? So following recombination, what happens? The cloning vector becomes part of the disarmed TI plasmid, which provides the virulence genes necessary for the transfer of the tDNA to the host plant. And the only way that is cloning vector can be maintained in Agrobacterium tumefaciens is as part of a co-integrate structure. Otherwise, it's not possible. So in this co-integrated configuration, the genetically engineered tDNA regions can be transferred to plant cells very easily. Right? So moving further, we have the physical methods of transferring genes to plants. So that was about the TI plasmid as a cloning vector. Next, we have the physical methods of transferring genes to plants. Although Agrobacterium tumefaciens mediated gene transfer systems are effective in most of the species, but not all plants can be transformed by using the TI plasmid. In particular, the monocotyledonous plants, that is the monocots. Say, for example, the major cereal crops such as the rice, wheat, and corn, they are not readily transformed by Agrobacterium tumefaciens. So that is most suited for the dicotyledonous plants, that is the dicots. So for monocots, an alternative protocols for the delivery of DNA has to be devised. If we just look at the table, this table lists some of the plant transformation methods that are or that have been studied very well, and some of them are still under the process of refinement. And a number of these methods require the removal of the plant cell wall to form the protoplasts. Most of the methods mentioned in the table, they dependent on formation of the protoplasts. That means they require the removal of the plant cell so that the protoplasts are formed. Now the plant protoplasts, they can be maintained in culture as independently growing cells or with a specific culture medium. And later the cell wall can be formed and the whole plants can be regenerated from these cells. So in addition, other transformation methods have been developed that introduce the cloned genes into small number of cells of a plant tissue from which the whole plants can be formed. So bypassing the need for regeneration of a plant from a protoplast. So you have two approaches. First is formation of protoplast, and then these protoplasts, they can be maintained in culture as independently growing cells or in a specific culture medium, and then the cell walls are formed and the whole plants are regenerated. Or else other transformation methods are there which introduce the cloned genes into a small number of cells of a plant tissue, and from which the whole plants can be formed, so that you are bypassing the need for regeneration from a protoplast. But at the present, most of the time the researchers, they favor the use of either TI plasmid based vectors or the micro projectile bombardment to deliver DNA into plant cells. So TI plasmid for the dicots and the microprojectile bombardment to deliver the DNA into plant cells, that is for monocots. These two are the most preferred method by most of the researchers. The microprojectile bombardment, we also refer this method as biolistic approach. This is supposed to be the most promising DNA delivery system for plants. So if you just look at any of the textbook, they will mention about the gold or the tungsten particles are used, the spherical gold or tungsten particles with a diameter ranging from 1 millimeter to 4 millimeters, and these either gold or tungsten spherical particles, they are coated with DNA and that has been precipitated with calcium chloride, spermidine or PEG, that is polyethylene glycol. Next, the coated particles, they are accelerated at a very high speed that is about 300 to 600 the speed that is the speed with which the particles move, and this is done with the help of a particle gun which uses the compressed air or the helium along with gunpowder to provide the propelling force. So at these speeds, the projectiles they are capable enough to penetrate the plant cell walls and even the membranes. So the particle density used does not significantly damage the cell. So that care has to be taken when you bombard the particles. It should not rupture the cell into or tear apart the cell into pieces. It should only penetrate the plant cell wall and membranes. So the particle size cannot be too big, and even the speed cannot be too high so that the cells are teared apart. So that should not happen. Particle size has to be small enough so that it only penetrates the cell wall and the membrane, and the damage to the cells should not be there. So once inside a cell, the DNA integrates into the plant DNA. So with a micro projectile bombardment system, it is possible to transform a large number of different plant species. So including the monocots and the conifers, and plants that are not susceptible to agrobacterium mediated DNA transfer. If they are susceptible to agrobacterium, then no issues. Other than that, if they are not susceptible, if they are resistant to that, then micro projectile bombardment system comes in hand for transforming these different plant species. So plants that have been successfully transformed by this micro projectile bombardment include as an examples the soybean, the cotton, papaya, maize, rice, sugarcane, wheat, and so on and so forth. And this method has also been used to deliver genes into chloroplasts and the mitochondria. Thus, it provides a way or an opening for the possibility of introducing the exogenous genes into these organelles. It is not only about you putting the genes, that is foreign genes or the exogenous genes, into the cell. It is also possible that these genes are introduced into the organelles, right? So this is about the micro projectile bombardment, also called as the biolistic approach for or the most promising DNA delivery system for the plants. So once the foreign DNA has been integrated into the plant genomic DNA, it is essential to be able to detect the foreign DNA or the exogenous DNA so that those cells that have been transformed can be easily identified. And furthermore, in studies of plant transcriptional regulatory signals and the functioning of these signals in specific plant tissues, say for example leaf, root and flowers, it is often important to be able to quantify the level of expression of a gene with a readily identified product. So number one, it is to identify that the cells have been transformed, and number two, quantifying the level of expression. So quantification and other applications, they require the use of reporter genes that either permit transformed cells to be selected or encode an activity that can be assayed. So to these ends, many of the researchers have tested a number of different genes as reporters for the transformation. And these include both genes that can be used as dominant selectable markers and genes whose proteins produce a detectable response to a specific assay. So it's a list of a different enzyme activity. So this include both genes that can be used as dominant selectable markers and as well as genes whose proteins produce a detectable response to a specific assay. And many of these reporter genes, they are from the bacteria and they have been equipped with plant specific regulatory sequences for expressions in the plant cells. So the dominant marker selection provides a direct means of obtaining only transformed cells in culture. That means, for example, in the presence of the antibiotic kanamycin, only plant cells with a function neomycin phosphotransferase gene, they can grow. So the needs of a particular experiment, so that often dictate which reporter gene will be used. So it all depends upon the need of the experiment or a specific or particular experiment, that is the one which dictate which reporter gene will be used. So when the expression of a reporter gene interferes with the normal plant functions, then it cannot be used in transgenic process or the transgenic food crops. So it should not interfere with normal plant functions. And in addition, in the perception of some researchers in the field of the biotechnology, the presence of some reporter genes and their products may taint a commercial product. So this is an observation made by some of the researchers, that the presence of some reporter genes or maybe their products, they may taint a commercial product. So if you look at from this perspective, in this context, it is best not to introduce antibiotic resistance genes into any crop plants. There's a sentence to be underlined. So some reporter gene products, say for example beta D glucuronidase and the bacterial luciferases, they can be detected in intact plant tissues. The most popular of these system in the is the E. coli beta D glucuronidase, that is we call it as GUS gene. So this encodes a stable enzyme that is not normally present in plants and that catalyzes the cleavage of a range of beta D glucuronides. So the GUS activity in transformed plant tissues can be localized by observing the blue color that is formed after the hydrolysis of the uncolored substrate, that is 5-bromo-4-chloro-3-indolyl beta D glucuronic acid. So alternatively, GUS activity in plant extracts can be more quantitatively and sensitively assayed by a fluorometric analysis. So this involves the hydrolysis of 4-methyl-ambelyferyl beta D glucuronide as a substrate to form a fluorescent product. So this is about the reporter gene system, the plant cell reporter gene system. Next, moving on to another concepts of the plant biotechnology, that is developing plant strains by using the genetic engineering tools. So the principal objective of plant biotechnology is to create a new variety which can be cultivated. So we call them as the cultivars. And many of the studies have focused on developing strains that give better yields without intentionally changing the food content of the plant. Okay, so genes that confer resistance to, say for example, insects, the viruses, the herbicides, or even the non-biological, that is environmental stress and senescence. So they have been incorporated into various plants. So we know that the genes that confer resistance to all of these, be it against the insects or viruses or herbicides or the environmental factors or the stresses and the senescence, they have been incorporated into various plants, and some of this has been extensively researched and most of them are available, easily accessible to read and understand. And some of the work has gone into manipulating the biochemical pathway of the flower pigmentation, modifying the plant products, and using plants as bioreactors. So it is not only about conferring resistance to the plants against the insects, viruses, or herbicides, but much more than that. See, some of the work have been done in with respect to manipulation of the biochemical pathway of the flower pigmentation, and we see there is modification of the plant products, and most of the research nowadays they are into the use of plants as the bioreactors. Okay, so we'll just try to understand with a conventional approach. So to begin with, it is about developing the insect resistant plants. If crop plants could be genetically engineered to produce a functional insecticides, then it might be possible to develop crops that would be intrinsically tolerant to insect predators and would not need to be sprayed often, like 6 to 8 times during a growing season. So what is the limitation or the disadvantage? See, it adds to the cost and also the hazardous nature of the chemical pesticides. So the cost of maintaining such insect resistant crops would be lower than that for non-resistant crops. So that is why developing insect resistant plant crops are very important. And moreover, biological insecticides are usually highly specific for a limited number of insect species, and they are generally considered to be non-hazardous to humans and even to other higher animals. So two main strategies have been used to confer the resistance against the insect predators. Number one, the first involves a gene for an insecticidal protoxin that is produced by one of several subspecies of the bacterium, that is Bacillus thuringiensis. And the second strategy uses genes for the protease inhibitors that have been shown to be effective against a wide variety of the insects. So their presence restricts the ability of insects to digest the food, that is the plants itself. So by interfering with the hydrolysis of plant proteins by insects, causing these insects to feed less. The first approach is it involves a gene for an insecticidal protoxin produced by Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay. The second strategy uses genes for protease inhibitors that have been shown to effective against wide variety of insects, and presence of these protease inhibitors, so they restrict the ability of insect to digest the food. That means it causes these insects to feed less. Right. The Bacillus thuringiensis protoxin does not persist in the environment, nor it is hazardous to mammals. Thus, it is a safe means of protecting the plants. But the scientific challenge in utilizing the Bacillus thuringiensis protoxin is to create a transgenic plant that expresses and synthesizes a functional form of this prokaryotic insecticide at sufficient levels to prevent damage by insect predation. So the challenge is how you utilize this Bacillus thuringiensis protoxin to create a transgenic plant, so that transgenic plant expresses and synthesizes a sufficient quantity or level of the insecticide, prokaryotic insecticide, so as to prevent the damage by insect predation. Okay, so I'll stop my discussion over here. We can continue our discussion in the next session. Thank you very much.